What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another video. So today we're finally getting away from the interior work that I've been doing on this car and focusing a little bit on the exterior. I've recently come across a pretty clean M Sport front bumper for this car. If you're unfamiliar, the M Sport front bumpers are a lot more aggressive and a lot cleaner looking on these cars than the stock ones that the base model cars came with. And so today I'm going to try to give you, or at least film, a step-by-step guide on how I remove the front bumper and replace it with the M Sport front bumper. And hopefully by the end, the car will be looking a lot better than it currently does now. So with that, let's hop into it. Alright, so first thing on the agenda, if you're trying to take off your front bumper on your F10, is we got to gain access to all the clips up top up here. So this little piece right here just kind of clips in to the plastic on the top of the bumper, and that'll reveal a couple clips down here, as well as a couple, I believe, T30 screws that we have to remove. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pop this off. Next thing we got to do is this whole piece is just clipped in, but it has to be loose to be able to pull the bumper off. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull these clips now. All you do is you lift up on the middle part and then pop it out just like this. Let's see if that focuses. Just pop up right here, and once that's out, you can pop the whole clip out. Set these over here. Again, pretty simple. Unfortunately, the majority of my tools are at work, so I'm left working with the bare minimum, which is this flathead screwdriver and not the proper clip removal tool. So I'm going to go ahead at this point and skip to when I have all these panels loose and off, and then I'll show you what we got to do in the wheel wells to be able to further get ready to remove the front bumper. Alright, so I was correct, and all of these bolts right here are all T30 sized, and there's 6 of them that I had to remove. There's one right there underneath this little panel that you had to take the clips out for. Then there's one right here, here, and again another one underneath right there. So now that we got all these off, the bumper is loose up top. So now we're going to move to the wheel wells and remove the fender liner piece to be able to gain access to the bolts underneath. And then once we do that on both sides, we'll check to see if, at least in my instance, if there's any bolts holding the skid plate on from underneath. And then once we remove all those, I will yank this bumper off. Alright, so we have the passenger side fender liner removed. I decided to remove mine because I'm already under there. It just makes sense to kind of have it out of the way. For me, there was only 12 8mm screws holding this piece in. They're all around the edges. There's like no clips, there's nothing in the middle. And at least in my case, there's nothing plugged in, there's no modules back here. I have a pretty base model car, all things considered. This isn't very spec'd out, so there was no like modules or anything. But if you decide to keep yours in the car and only make room to do this to get the bumper off, all you need to look out for, let me see if I can show you, is underneath here there's 2 8mm screws. You can see one back there is already kind of coming out. I got it loose, and then there's this one. And that's all you need to get undone, because once those screws are out, the bumper will be loose from the bracket that holds it to the car, and then you'll be able to pull this bumper out basically. And so I'm gonna go ahead and repeat this process on the other side, and then I'm gonna get underneath the car and check that there's no screws holding the splash shield on, and if there is, remove them, and then hopefully we'll be able to finally take this bumper skin off. Alright, something to look out for when you're removing the bumper. Doesn't honestly matter what car you're doing it on. Just be careful when you finally do take it off, as there might be connectors or things hooked up to the lights down there. And in my instance, I had one connector on the driver's side to the fog light, and then I had this connector here, hopefully you could see that, that plugged into a main harness right here. That went to all the other electronics like the sensors and whatnot. So make sure you remove that. Just be very careful. Remove this other fog light connector. see. There we go. All right, so just like that, the stock base model front bumper is removed from the car. Once again, I just wanted to show you, now that I have the camera available, I had one connector on the driver's side for the fog light, and then over here I had the same connector for the passenger side fog light, but I also had this connector, which was kind of a pain to remove, to be honest. But this is the connector that allows for this harness that goes to the parking sensors to be plugged in. So unless you want to stand here and try to unclip this entire harness from the bumper while holding it, I suggest just unplugging this connector to be able to remove this, and then swap over the harness and the parking sensors with it off of the car, just like this. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the little wiring harness and all these parking sensors and swap them over to this bumper, and then we'll throw that one on. Here we go. Alright, so the bumper's all done. I'm gonna go ahead and toss it back on the car. Install is the complete reverse of how I told you guys to remove the bumper. You just get it on there, plug all the connectors in. I would start with probably the bottom, making sure the bottom bolts line up in the splash shield. Then the fender liners, then up top, button it up, and I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's all put back together. Alright, so I was actually going back through and looking at the clips, and I realized I kind of made a mistake that I wanted to make this clip and show you guys to correct that real quick. But if you're just doing the M Sport front bumper swap and you're not swapping any other parts, you got to be careful, because I mentioned in the last clip to start with the bottom to be able to bolt things up correctly. And unfortunately, with this bumper, there's a different underbody panel design, and so those holes that worked with your stock bumper won't really line up with this new bumper. Now you can make them work, but it might flex a little bit underneath. I got a couple of mine in there just to keep it secure, so it wasn't like flapping in the wind when I drove and I wasn't hearing a noise. But of the 10 bolts underneath that I had to remove, I only put 2 back on, and they were all underneath. The bolts for the fender liners are all in there, so it's secure on the side and where it bolts to the bumper there, but underneath it doesn't have all the bolts. And so just be careful if you don't buy all the panels, that you're likely going to have that same issue that I have, where things don't line up 100% on the bottom. Otherwise, everything else should bolt up just fine. You shouldn't have any issues. So hopefully save you a little hassle by making this clip for you guys. Alright, I'm almost done putting this back together, but I really quickly wanted to tell you guys something I kind of came across that I didn't really anticipate, but I think you might run into if you are doing the same M Sport front bumper swap. I had to remove this little hard styrofoam like bash bar guard. I don't even know what you'd call that, to be honest, but it sits right underneath here all along that silver piece, and on top of that I had to remove that little clip right there, that little with the 8mm, in order to make room. I was having a really hard time putting this bumper on for some reason. It didn't want to line up right to either of the sides. I was kind of having a hard time getting this side piece in like that, and it's because I had to take that piece off. I ended up taking this little clip piece off that you just saw on the other side, but on the passenger side, and was able to get this thing to fit right. So I'm gonna finish it up, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's all buttoned up and put back together. Alright, the car is finally back on the ground. Everything's all buttoned up, and this thing looks awesome, you guys. I'm super stoked with the way this came out. Really makes the front end look a lot more aggressive and a lot more clean and put together. And thankfully the condition of this bumper was a lot better than the condition of my stock bumper that the car came with. So it looks really good. Also, I don't know if you could tell in the video, but this bumper actually isn't the same color as my car. But I wanted to throw it on anyways to kind of not only see how it looked, but also kind of like push me to like continue modding this car. I have plans to wrap this car eventually, and so this bumper has just been sitting in my garage for a few months now, just kind of collecting dust, and I really wanted to throw it on and see what it looked like and get some clips and stuff, and also film this DIY for you guys. So if you're wondering, or if you happen to not make it this far in the video without having wondered by now, that's why. But anyways, I'm gonna finish up putting on the logo, get a couple B-roll clips, and finish this video. I'm really stoked with the way the front bumper turned out. It looks awesome, and I was really fortunate that the front grills, the slatted grills that I had on my last bumper, swapped over to this bumper. I'm pretty sure everything I've gotten so far for this car has come from an LCI model, and my car is a pre-LCI model, and I was really worried that those grills weren't going to fit, because that style of grill, that dual slat, is something I wanted to do anyways, and when I bought the car I was stoked that I had them. So I'm stoked that those fit. Unfortunately, the little headlight washer covers don't swap over from my old bumper. I'm gonna have to buy those. But all things considered, it looks really good. It was a pretty straightforward swap, and hopefully if you watch this video, you'll get an understanding for how you could do the M Sport front bumper swap on your F10. But anyways, if you're interested in checking out any of the interior stuff I've done so far with the car, feel free to check out one of these videos on the side. And until then, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.